So welcome everyone. So this main event will run for around an hour. We've set all the audio to mute. If you have any questions, feel free to add them into the chat box, and we'll do as best as we can to answer as many as possible in our scheduled Q&A time. We'll also have a little bit of time at the end of the event if we don't get a chance to answer everything. So as the title suggests, a warm welcome to Chit Chat, where we will be talking all about our plans to end cheetah trafficking. So this event is going to be jam-packed full of stories and updates and opportunities for you to take part to support this really exciting campaign. So firstly, and I'm ever so sorry to say, a huge apology on behalf of our founder, Dr. Laurie Marker. Due to unforeseen circumstances, she's been unable to attend, but she will be really closely following our campaign and is so grateful for you all for joining in and supporting us today. But fear not, we have some fantastic speakers coming up. So this event is completely free to attend, but we have just launched a really exciting appeal, and every penny that you donate until the 29th of April will be matched. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. You can also visit our website at any point and we'll send you the links to join. So I'm going to present my screen. But before, as we're just doing that, we are so pleased to see so many cheetah fans here today, and it would be great to know a little bit more about you. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here today. And I'd love for our CCF colleagues to do the same so you can see how many of the team is online. And I'm going to hand over to Bridget, and I'm going to hopefully attempt to present my screen.
Hi, we'd like to welcome our fantastic speakers here today. So we have firstly Brian Badger, who is the CCF Director of Conservation and Outreach, who will be talking all about the illegal wildlife trade of cheetahs and, importantly, what CCF is doing to combat it. Giles Clark, the wildlife conservationist, TV presenter, and our CCF UK ambassador, he will be talking about the illegal wildlife trade in the context of his trip to CCF Somaliland. You'll then have a chance to ask both Brian and Giles your questions, along with the UK Executive Director and Board Member, Dr. Jane Galton. Then Faith and Laura will be telling us all about how you can get involved in our call to action. And throughout the event, we'll also be asking you a range of questions just to test your cheetah knowledge. So before we hear from our first speaker, we've got our first quiz question for you. And that is, how many cheetah cubs a year are estimated to be taken from the wild to be sold as pets? A, 100, or B, 300? So if you'd like to put your answers in the text box, we'll have a look. I'll give you a few seconds to answer. That's right. Look, your cheetah knowledge is looking good. The answer is B, 300. 300 cheetahs a year are taken from the Horn of Africa, where there are less than 500 adults in total, making cheetah population here at risk of extinction. So I'm going to hand back to Laura now.
Thank you, Bridget. So please do keep introducing yourself in the chat box. So we are so thrilled to have one of our amazing colleagues here today, Brian Badger, who, as Bridget said, is our Director of Conservation and Outreach. And Brian's actually dialing in from the US today. So if you thought it was an early start for you guys, it's so early for Brian. So hopefully he's had his coffee this morning. Brian's going to talk to you all about our conservation projects and give a little bit more context about the illegal pet trade. And as Bridget said, feel free to ask Brian questions, pop them in the chat box, and we will answer them for you after Brian and Giles's presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand over to Brian. And this should work seamlessly.
Is that right? I thought Giles was going first, but okay, that's fine. I can do that. And am I going now?
Yeah, you're going now, Brian.
Okay, sorry about that. I misread the emails. I really should pay more attention. But good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many faces. And you know, if only we was doing this live, it would be you know, absolutely great. But, you know, at the same time, it's a great way for everybody to get together and share experiences and opinions and answer questions, because, you know, in this world of conservation, there always should be questions, you know, and CCF's job is to ask these questions and to find out what the root cause of these problems are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a little slideshow that I put together, and you'll have to excuse me because I've never used this before. This is brand new, especially for you. And just to prove it, I've even put the Chit Chat label on there. So, you know, so what is the illegal wildlife trade? You know, what are we talking about? Because in conservation, a lot of the time, words are bandied around and accepted, but not necessarily understood. So, you know, we are talking about Somaliland, because that's where CCF's operation is. But why? Why are we talking about Somaliland? Why does Somaliland come up all the time? Well, first of all, where it is. It's in the Horn of Africa. So where the red star is on the presentation, that's where the capital of Hargeisa. And the automated state of you know, they declared independence from Somalia around about 34 years ago. So the reason is because that's where the cheetahs and other animals and illegal wildlife, the illegal wildlife trade, that's where it passes through. So that brings me to my first point, because whenever we talk about illegal wildlife trade, you know, we always talk about Somaliland, Somaliland, Somaliland. And that sometimes is misunderstood because it looks as though from the outside is Somaliland is the problem, you know, but it really isn't. That isn't the problem. That's the route that the illegal wildlife trade passes through. So Somaliland is as much part of the solution as CCF, as anybody else, because they're taking responsibility, they're taking ownership, and they are the ones that are on the ground, and they are the ones that are seizing the cubs, and those are the ones that have asked us for help, because, you know, if you know, it's the old adage, and I can use analogies from the UK because you lot understand it. It takes me about 10 minutes to explain every phrase to an American, and if you are American and watching this morning, I do apologize. But, you know, it's if you can't do it, then you should know a man who can, or a woman who can. So, you know, that's why Somaliland is mentioned all the time. Now, the route goes across the Gulf of Aden, most typically into the Arabian Peninsula. And so what we're doing is we're almost kind of working backwards. It's no good us working solely at the end point, because that doesn't stop the trade. You know, it might disrupt the trade, but it doesn't stop it. So what you have to do is you have to start backtracking to find out where the source is and where the problem starts. And that means setting up collaborations, because you can't do everything on your own. Nothing in conservation is achievable if you try to do it alone. Now, whether that's other organizations, whether it's government working groups, whether it's, you know, the European Parliament, whether it's, you know, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you need to get as many people on board as you possibly can. So as much as working in Somaliland, we're working in the Yemen, in Ethiopia, in Somalia, as well as Somaliland, obviously, you know, working out what we can do collectively, what we can do, because that's the only way that we can do it. But it surprises a lot of people. A lot of these countries are on board, you know, because this is theft of their natural resources. Now, some people just want to talk about, you know, cute cubs and poor cubs and stuff like that. But if you put it down to its basic thing, somebody is stealing your natural resources, you know, and that, fine. If that gets the job done, we can put any label on it you want. It doesn't matter. It's all semantics. But working with these places and even spreading out into places like Kenya, Tanzania, and Sudan and Uganda, you know, it's kind of spreading the net, but at the same time, it's tightening the net, you know, on the illegal wildlife trade. So when the you know, when these seizures are made, and you know, the cubs, they'll come in and they're in shocking conditions. You know, you can see on the top left there, that was how a few cubs were actually transported for hours and days. So they come in a terrible state. You know, only around about 1 in 6, 1 in 5 would survive the journey. And if they did survive the journey, they wouldn't be expected to live very long, even at the end of the journey. So CCF, when it first started in Somaliland, in that region, you know, it was very reactionary. You know, it was almost like a field hospital, if you like, although we didn't have a field hospital. So we had to do it from scratch. You know, we had to, at first we was just, you know, finding a house, renting a house, and every bedroom was full of cubs. And, you know, with makeshift veterinary clinics in the bathroom and stuff like that. But, you know, we knew that couldn't sustain itself. So we had to start building. So we started to build like triage centers. We started to build quarantine, because if a cub comes in sick and you're all in one house, you know, this is a perfect opportunity to use analogies. You know, this is the COVID situation. So lockdown for cheetahs started now 5 years ago, because when they come in from these remote areas, you know, with disease, the cheetahs from different regions, different places. So, you know, we had to set up this thing. And now we're on the bottom left there is one that I helped design and build. It's called Safe House 2, and now we're on to Safe House 3. So we've got 3 centers like these. But again, this is the reactionary side, and you can't sustain for too long if you're only reactionary. You know, you have to be proactive. So the cubs, when they, as I said, when they come in, the first thing is that you have to get them back to health. You know, that's 101 stuff. You know, as you can see on the left, they're very scared. They've been ripped away from their mothers. And I'm not just trying to be emotive here. You know, this is the fact, you know, that they come in, and our success rate is way beyond what it should be, you know, but the team and the support that we've got is enabled us to actually do this job. And right at this moment, there's around 59 of these cats, varying in age from around about 3 or 4 months all the way up to around about 3 years old. And they're currently in our care in Somaliland itself. So then you have to start getting proactive. You know, you have to start getting supplies. There's no supplies in Somaliland. You know, there's no PetSmart or whatever it is there. You know, it's Pets R Us or anything like that. So everything has to come in. A lot of it comes in via the UK, because the UK has got a relationship. One of the very few external countries that have got a fairly good relationship with Somaliland. So getting supplies in, you know, and also, you know, you can't just rely on foreigners coming in and doing it. So, you know, using the ethics that we've been using for the last 30 years, training local people, you know, we're working closely with the University of Hargeisa with their veterinary training. Now, they have got vets, and they have got reasonably good vets, but they're only trained in livestock. That's all. There's no small pet trade in Somaliland. So it's kind of, you know, no point in teaching them how to treat cats and dogs, because that's not going to happen. There's no pets. It's an Islamic country, so you have to bear that in mind as well. So, you know, you have to think really outside the box when you're doing it. So we started training vets, not just in Somaliland, but also on the borders with Ethiopia as well, where we believe the trade is coming in. But then when we train these vets, they're very receptive of doing it. You know, they're learning new skills and they're willing to implement those skills on the ground. And again, that spreads the net. You know, that's saving cats, because like any treatment, any emergency treatment, you know, the quicker that you act, the more success that you're likely to get. So training them in all different sorts of triage and first aid, you know, teaching them new methods with our equipment that we've managed to get out there, which again, you know, with blood samplers and bits and pieces like that, you know, sometimes you really didn't have the chance to do it because import and export is so difficult. So teaching them, you know, with stuffed animals, it looks a bit bizarre, but it works. You know, it works. And teaching them CPR of small stock and business, you know, it's just giving a bigger skill set to the local people, and explaining to people the quite unique problems that cheetahs might face. So then we start to think about, you know, we can't just use these safe houses. You know, we have to look for a longer term solution. A lot of those little cubs that you see in the pictures, you know, they can't be released back into the wild. They've got no skills whatsoever. So the government has agreed to give us some land up in an area called Gidebli. That's that Gid Debel. But that's Gidebli, and it's quite an arid region. But when you actually look at it, you know, it is desert, but it's incredibly similar to Namibia, where we've worked. So when we're out there, you know, we use every opportunity to cover every single angle that we can. And with, like all conservation, you have to work with the people. You know, you have to engage with them. You have to help them. You have to encourage them, and you have to educate, you know, because just because we know it doesn't mean somebody else knows it. You know, even some of the laws, a lot of people didn't know that it was illegal to take cheetahs from the wild, you know, and that seems quite bizarre to us. But, you know, you can walk through a forest or walk along a beach or something and pick up a little souvenir, and you think that that's okay. Well, you may be breaking a law. How do you know if nobody's ever told you? So, you know, if taking it from one extreme, picking a small flower, to taking a cheetah out of the wild, you know, you don't assume that they know it. And then when you start to engage with the local people, you know, education is a two-way street. You know, you start learning what the problems are. And we found out very, very quickly, really, relatively speaking, that it wasn't just the illegal wildlife trade that was going on. You know, there was an element of human-wildlife conflict. You know, some of these people, they're relying on farming goats and sheep and camels and chickens and other bits and pieces. So, you know, there is an element of there. So explaining the role of the predators in the ecosystem, you know, and finding out what the problems are and see what solutions that we can develop to secure the area. And going into the schools, you know, not only teaching the kids, the next generation, because, you know, they've been getting bad information for a long time. Because if the cheetahs believe that it may not be breaking the law, then obviously they're going to pass it on to the kids. So teaching the teachers, teaching the kids, engaging with the kids, getting them to understand their own environment. So when we're out there surveying the land, you know, we're engaging with hundreds, if not thousands of people. And we're teaching as much as we're learning as well. And so, you know, some of the farmers and the local people that we're talking to, you know, there is a perception of you know, cheetahs are bad, predators are bad, you know, bad for the livelihood. But we can give them alternatives. We've got 30 years of experience working with the human wildlife conflict side. So, you know, it's not as simple as, you know, a lot of you would have heard of our livestock guarding dog program. It's not as simple as flying dogs in there, because again, the people are different in Somaliland than they are in Namibia. You know, they haven't got that inherent love of dogs as I know that the UK have, and I have personally as well. So, you know, you have to address different ways, you know. But then we started to survey the land. We we stole a ride on a UN helicopter. They'd go nuts if they ever find out. I saw it on a on a video game once, and I thought I can pull this off. So we went out and we started to survey the land. And then on this little video clip that hopefully you can see, up on this ridge here, we saw a family of hyena in that area, which, there we go. I don't know if you can see that going through there. I've got my little pointer just going on there. But it kind of proves that there are other predators in the area. So it's not just the cheetahs that we're dealing with. And that gives us a whole new aspect of how we can teach the people, you know, what we can do. Now, the area of lands that we're hoping to develop into, and I don't like to use the word sanctuary, you know, just throwing it out there, but taking the cats out of that quite sterile environment that's the safe houses, you know, and actually giving them a better quality of life, because we are going to be responsible for the rest of their lives. You know, this is the type of area which, if you've seen pictures of Namibia, it's incredibly similar. So, you know, we're not going into the realms of the unknown here. So we've, you know, this is the area that we hopefully develop. This used to be British. This used to be a cattle station, which we're able to develop. Now, you know, when we're out there as well, we're learning about the landscape. We're learning about, you know, what wildlife is there, what prey species, you know, and while we've done our studies, again, at the same time when we're surveying the land, we're surveying the wildlife. So you've got things like dik-dik and warthog and gerenuk. So you have got a prey base out there. You have got an alternative to the livestock. You know, if there was no wildlife left and there's predators out there and there's goats and sheep, well, you know, you don't have to be a genius to find out what the predators are going to go after. But there is an alternative. There is a foundation where we can build an alternative. We can build a solution. But the only way that we're going to stop, you know, this trade, at the same time as working with all the human wildlife conflict, we deal with that. But first of all, we've got to stem the trade. Now, it's estimated that like 300 cheetahs a year are taken just for the illegal wildlife trade. Now, the estimated population in that area at best is 500. Again, you don't have to, you know, be a genius to find out that this problem in the Horn of Africa is dire, you know, and it's crucial, and it's incredibly urgent that we act very, very quickly. We're working with our genetics lab in Namibia, because every cat that comes in, we take samples. We want to know where the origin was, because they cannot be taken out of the Horn of Africa. So we're doing a lot of forensic work, identifying where these are coming from. And the more information that we get, the better we understand the problem, and the faster that we can find the solution. But the only way that we can do it is basically, you know, we just got to end cheetah trafficking, because if we don't, we are going to lose the species in the area. And ultimately, if the trade is just left to go on, you know, at 300 a year and an estimated total population of only 7,000, you know, this could, if we don't stop that trade in that region, it's going to spread out. And there is a dire possibility that we can lose the cheetah as a species. So that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about it. And that's why it's going to be action. So hopefully I didn't go on for too long. And I don't know who I'm handing it back over to, but thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. And as I said, at the end of the presentations, I'll do my best to answer any questions for you. But thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Brian. That was fantastic. And I'm also really pleased to say my neighbours have started playing some very loud music. So I'm sorry if you can hear any background noise. a bit of a livener for a Saturday morning. But Brian, that was absolutely fabulous and so exciting to see our work in action. Please do pop your questions in the chat box. So without much further ado, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you all to Giles Clarke, who I'm sure many of you will know from the TV. So he is a conservationist, TV presenter, and I'm really proud to say one of our amazing UK ambassadors. So I'm going to hand over to Giles as I share my screen again. Okay, over to Giles, you've got the floor.
Well, thank you, Laura. And I wish I had gone first now, Brian, because after following your presentation, I'm not sure if I'm going to live up to expectations here. It was really, as always, and I've seen you do it many times, always incredibly informative and gets, you know, to the point, but in a way that everybody can understand and relate to. So I was just going to spend a few minutes talking about my experience when I visited Somaliland and the CCF project, 18 months ago now. I went towards the end of 2019, which feels like almost a lifetime ago with this whole pandemic situation. But I went in two roles, effectively. First of all, as wearing my CCF hat as being an ambassador and also a trustee. I always feel you get a much better idea of the situation on the ground. You can speak with much more conviction if you see these situations for yourself. So that was really important for me, as I said, with my CCF hat on. And then I also went as part of a BBC crew where we were, and still continue to try and pursue to do either a documentary or a series or maybe a features doc about the illegal wildlife trade in that region. And as you know, there's a couple of points I would just, you know, add to what you said, Brian, is that, yes, that is the route of the illegal wildlife trade that goes up through there. Obviously, it's the closest or one of the closest crossing over points to the Middle East. But you know, the people that are involved, not necessarily at first in taking wildlife out of the wild. Sometimes that's opportunistically by communities. Other times it's on purpose. But either way, once it starts to get into the trade networks, those same people are trafficking arms, they're trafficking drugs, and even people. You know, you're talking about once it gets past the first or second step, you're talking about some really sort of unsavory, nasty characters. So when I visited though, 18 months ago, there was 30 or 29 cheetahs that were in the care of the first, and at that time, the only safe house. And as you mentioned, a huge, much bigger facility was built just after I left, and now even having to expand beyond that. So in 18 months, you know, it's almost doubled its numbers now. I think we're up to about 55 cheetahs and even a leopard or a young juvenile leopard that's been rescued as part of that trade as well. And it's really important, I think we should point out that what CCF are doing is allowing and enabling the authorities, you know, Somaliland authorities and government have been so proactive and very supportive of trying to end the illegal wildlife trade in the region, especially in comparison to some other governments. But without CCF's help, they wouldn't be able to enable and enact that law enforcement operation. It's one thing to say, okay, well, we're going to arrest the traders, but what do you do if you don't have facilities to house these live animals? And I think that's, you know, another aspect. I've been incredibly fortunate and really privileged over the course of my career of working with animals, both in captivity, but also then beyond that, trying to support conservation efforts in the wild. And so I've seen and been to many countries around the world, many areas around the world. And the wildlife trade is always abhorrent. It's always disgusting. I've seen wildlife markets, you know, in multiple countries. I've been involved with the traditional Chinese and Asian medicine market when it comes to bear farms, tiger farms, etc., in Southeast Asia as well. But there's something really abhorrent when it comes to trading in live animals. Like you mentioned, you know, those cheetahs that were in those what looks like washing baskets. We should also add that, you know, a couple of those individual cheetahs were not just in washing baskets, they were hog-tied and had been hog-tied, you know, with their legs in really uncomfortable positions for days at a time. So there is something, and we shouldn't shy away from the fact that it needs to be a motive. People need to know and realize what's happening. And at the end of the day, yes, the cheetah is critically endangered, but any critically endangered species is made up of individuals, you know, and those individuals experience all the same things that we do: fear, pain, hunger, suffering, etc. And at the end of the day, they don't know and probably don't particularly care that their species is endangered or critically endangered when they're going through, you know, and suffering that type of torment and treatment. And so just to move on, I'm checking the time because I'm notorious for always over talking. But people, you know, people think, oh, well, it is disgusting and it's horrible, but it's in another country and we've got plenty of other problems of our own, you know, both at home and overseas. You know, and what does the wildlife trade have to do with me effectively? And I think if we've learned nothing over the last 18 months from this absolutely horrid pandemic that the entire world has been caught up in, it should be that wake-up call that the wildlife trade does affect everybody. So, you know, if you look at our past experiences and what we've learned from other, what we call zoonotic diseases, so viruses and diseases that can be passed from animals to humans, we know that SARS came from wildlife. We know that Ebola came from wildlife. We know that originally HIV, you know, which leads on to AIDS, came from wildlife. And the world is almost 99.9% sure that COVID-19 came from wildlife. And it's not wildlife's fault. It's the way in which we interact with wildlife, and it's what we do to it that enables those viruses to jump from species to species and ultimately over to humans. And so if you think the whole world has effectively ground to a halt over the course of the last 18 months due to coronavirus, which would have stemmed from one of those wildlife markets, most definitely probably in the region of China, then what's to say that, you know, the next one won't be from a species that's crossing over from the Horn of Africa into the Middle East? You know, wildlife trade has an impact on everybody, and so therefore it's, you know, everybody's responsibility to help tackle that. And that's what I love so much about what CCF is doing. You know, it's always got a holistic approach, and it will be that holistic approach of working with partners on the ground, working with governments, authorities around the world, working with local communities to tackle these problems. It's that holistic approach that will ultimately bear results. Right, I think that's it from me. So I'm more than happy to talk to people about questions there as well.
Thank you ever so much, Giles. That was incredible. And just a big round of applause to Brian and Giles. Thank you very much. We loved hearing from you today. You can see all the hands clapping. I forced everyone to be mute. So moving on to a really exciting aspect, a chance to hear your questions to Brian, to Giles, and also to our Exec Director, Dr. Jane Galton. So we've already had some questions in the chat. So I'm going to take the first one, and my co-host Bridget will take the next one. So if I just scroll up the chat box, we've got a question from Roger. Do you do any work in the Arabian Peninsula to reduce demand for cheetah cubs? So I'm going to hand that question to Jane and Brian.
You want to go first, Brian?
First, yeah. Yes, we do work everywhere. You know, if there's something, we've got a team that, you know, that know the region and know the people very, very well. But during the very early stages of our involvement you know, it was working with the people in the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, you know, because even, you know, you can't, it's one of these things where you have to look very objectively, you know, you can't get mad, you know, you have to look at things in a very logical way. A lot of people find that difficult because, you know, again, it's a very emotive subject, you know, but, you know, by educating and engaging with the people in the Arabian Peninsula, we was able to save quite a few cheetahs that have made it all the way to the other end that wouldn't have lived very long. But at the same time, that's not advocating the trade. You know, you have to be very careful. There's a balance there, and you can't treat everybody as an enemy. You know, when you're dealing with a problem, you know, it was exactly the same in Namibia, you know, with farmers killing cheetahs. You know, you can't go in there all guns blazing and start wagging a finger. You know, you didn't work. So you had to work with the people. So yes, we do work, you know, and because of our involvement and the attitude, I think, that we went in there with, we were accepted to a greater extent. And then people were getting to find out that perhaps it wasn't such a good idea to get cheetahs. You know, these are not easy animals to look after. These isn't what, you know, it's not everything it says on the tin type thing. So, you know, we was able to make friends in the area, a lot of friends in the area. And, you know, you'll get a lot further if you've got friends rather than just have enemies. So yeah, you know, long and short of it, yes, we do work there as well. Jane,
I think the other thing is that we are, I can't talk about one particular thing yet because it's not been announced, but Laurie's going to be joining a very important foundation in one of the areas, one of the countries in the region. And that foundation will be working to reduce the illegal wildlife trade in the region. Also, it comes down to obviously to budgeting, and what Brian was talking about was, if whenever Laurie goes up to the region, she tries to educate vets on how to take care of the cheetahs that are already there so that they're better looked after. But we're also looking to find influencers in the region, and they're going to be eventually, hopefully, a larger social media program. So, but yes, I mean, following on what Brian was saying, we want to reduce supply, we want to reduce demand, and the two go hand in hand.
Thank you, Faye.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a question from Nicola Grieve. Do you think it will be necessary to have rangers stroke protection at the sanctuary, or do you believe that the cheetahs will be relatively safe?
Yes to both of those, really. I mean, it is out of town. It is, not in the where the safe houses are now are very close to. They're in kind of Greater Hargeisa, if you see, if that makes sense. So if it was London, the safe house is maybe in Enfield. So it's kind of just outside, but that which is not ideal. But as far as rangers go, yes, you will need rangers. If you was naive enough to think that everything would be rosy up there, the poachers and like Giles was saying, this is a part of a very big business, and if you all of a sudden have a sanctuary with 50 or 60 cheetahs in it, it almost could be like a supermarket, so yes, you would have to have rangers there, but it's a whole lot better to have the rangers out in Gedebli and that sort of region than it is to try and just secure a compound on the edge of a city. But yes, you would definitely need rangers.
Yeah, because you can sell them at $10,000 to the end user.
Yeah.
So if you just multiply 55 by $10,000, it's a big business.
Yeah.
So we have guards that protect each of the cheetah houses. So we'll definitely need to have rangers to protect them in Gedebli, which is 40,000 hectares of land. So there's going to have to be, you know, quite a few rangers to keep an eye on them.
I mean, that's in the region of around about 150 square miles.
Mm.
So it's a big area.
Thank you very much, Jane and Brian. So next question we've got from John Meakin is, where is the biggest demand for cheetahs?
The biggest demand is the Arabian Peninsula. That is the main route through. You know, it's debatable what country it is. You know, again, you get news reports coming through, and focuses are made on individual countries, but to a certain degree, I think that's quite unfair and counterproductive. Because, you know, when you start to spread out, you know, what is the trade? What is a private collection? What is a private zoo? What is a pet? It starts getting very, very, very difficult to find out what that is. All we know is that it is an illegal trade, taking them from the wild over there. So, you know, that's one of the main reasons why we have to kind of backtrack and stem the flow. But to answer the question quite briefly, yeah, it is the Arabian Peninsula.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Brian. We've got time for a couple more questions. Over to Bridget.
I've got a question. Yeah, we've got a question from Victoria Hannah. Do you affiliate with African park networks? If not, would it be beneficial?
Yes, we do. We're working with them to develop, well, we're collaborating with them in Somaliland. So, yeah.
They're being, you know, we're working in collaboration with them as far as making the master plans, because it is like from nothing. We've got to get this done from nothing. So and you know, you need to bring in as many tangible experts as possible, and African parks are very good.
Can I just go back to, because I'm just picking up on something that Brian says, but I think it's really important to emphasize that I think, you know, the sort of the strategy before, I think, was really to sort of you know, to put all the people in the Arabian Peninsula on the naughty step.
Mm-hmm.
And we realize that the only way that we're going to be able to reduce demand is really to work with them. So we are, you know, we're adjusting our messaging, and we don't want to be quite so, as Brian was saying, we don't want to target one particular country, although we know that there are more cheetahs in a couple of countries than others, but we just want to soften our approach and to make sure that we have a much more collaborative messaging in the future.
Yeah.
Very much. So we have a question from Clara. Clara, if you have any rangers guarding them at the sanctuary, will you have anti-poaching style rangers? So would you be looking into having an all-female team similar to the Black Mambas to increase effectiveness, as the women raise kids and grandkids when they go home, passing on a positive message and becoming a role model? So an idea and a question rolled into one there.
Yeah, it is an idea and a question, and yes, there's lots of levels to that question, and they kind of, yes, they would be like anti-poaching in a strange sort of way. I think the idea of the Black Mambas, you know, and I'm in total agreement. I'm not saying that, and they're incredibly effective, and I've got so much respect for the Black Mambas. It's you know, it's not even tangible. It's phenomenal. You know, what you have to bear in mind is that it is a totally Islamic country. You know, so you you know, I'm not going to try and be politically correct, but to force that or to encourage that at this stage again would be counterproductive. However, you have to kind of, you know, play the game. You have to play the political game. You know, you have to be very, very careful of you're not trying to instill your belief system or your, you know, or too much opinionated thing. You know, first of all, we have to secure the trade. Now, I'm not saying that women are you know, not given opportunities in Somaliland, in that region. You know, again, you can't tar every country with the same brush. That is a very dangerous thing to do. You know, the minister of the environment and rural development is a woman. You know, she is a top level government official in Somaliland. So there are better opportunities for women. A lot of the, you know, on the pictures there, you saw some women vets coming through, you know, so it is a possibility. And I agree, it would be fantastic in the future if we could have the Black Mamba type thing. They are as, if not more effective than males. There's no question of that. But right at this stage of the game, we just need the protection and to stop the trade, stop the trafficking.
Can I just add to that? I'm doing and done and doing a lot of work with rangers. And like you said, there's now several all-women anti-poaching units, but you need to identify what the threat is before you can't create a solution before identifying what the threat is. So, you know, out there, like the guest that just asked the question and pointed out about the communities, the Black Mambas work really well in that perspective. But if in this area we've got very, very few communities, then it wouldn't be ethical or wise to have unarmed female rangers going up against, you know, potential wildlife traffickers. So you would need to, again, going back to that point, it needs a holistic approach that will be a combination of different measures.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Giles. We're going to close our questions now, but we'll have time after the event's finished. We'll be staying on for a few more minutes to answer any other questions. Just want to say a huge thank you to Jane and to Brian and to Giles for answering the questions with so much honesty and sharing such fascinating updates about our work. As is probably really evident to everyone, this is an enormously complex subject, but it's really positive that all the amazing work we're doing is starting to have an impact for everyone involved. But just a massive thank you to our incredible speakers, to Brian for joining us so early in the morning from the US, to Giles, thank you so much for making the time to attend and present today, to Jane, our Exec Director, to my lovely co-host Bridget, and to Faith for all your support with preparing for this event, and of course our amazing Midlands Cheetah community who can just give a little wave. So hopefully you can see everyone. So thank you as well so much to all of our supporters and our partners and everyone that's donated so far today, and our incredible team of volunteers across CCF UK. So in case you didn't know, we are 99% volunteers here in the UK, which is just fabulous. And if you want to join and take part, I'll put my email in the chat box, so just drop me a note and let me know if you've got a bit of time you'd like to give as well. So we are going to be hanging on for another 10 minutes. Just in case we've missed any questions. But for those of you that want to head off, thank you ever so much and have fabulous weekends. Thank you so much for joining.
And if I could just add something very quickly, this is a very emotive subject. You know, it can be looked at as being sad and being, you know, horrible. And yeah, I can't disagree with that. But at the same time, it's a million miles away from being a pointless, frivolous exercise, because there's no inevitability. There's only an inevitability if you give up, you know, and we are not going to give up, and we are going to continue fighting. We are going to continue to instigate change, and we can't do that without the support, without your support, without groups around the world support, without support in the region, you know, at all different levels. It doesn't matter what level it is, whether you're a government minister or whether you're doing a bake sale at school. It's all part of conservation. If you help, if you know, even if you educate people on the thing, you are a conservationist. And we can do this, but we can only do this if we do it together. So I'll thank you in advance for your support, because basically any action that you make is going to save the cheetah and save other animals in the region and stop this abhorrent trade and help the region develop, you know, its natural resources. And that is a very, you know, kind of mechanical way of saying cheetahs, you know, cheetahs, leopards, all plethora of animals and the ecosystem. So thank you in advance, but don't think for a minute that we're not going to do this, because together we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Okay, so we are hanging on another 5 minutes to answer any questions we've missed. So I think we did have a couple. I'm just scrolling up the chat box. Sorry, it's quite far up the chat box now. Have we run any publicity campaigns in the Arabian Peninsula? And how about using sports stars or the World Cup coming up in Qatar? And that's from John Meakin again.
I'll take that. We haven't run any yet. And I think that, as I was saying before, if we did that without the collaboration of the governments, then it would be again being seen to be, you know, admonishing the governments and the people of the Arabian Peninsula. And our view is that we have to work together. So we will identify influencers, but it will be done with the support of the governments. So we need to, you know, we're working on that slowly, but that's something that we want to do. Again, it comes down to funding. You know, one of the questions I noticed in the chat box was the cost. The cost of running the cheetah safe houses is $31,000 a month. It's not just for safe houses, but we've got educators, we've got British vets, we've got Somaliland vets, we have cheetah keepers. We need people to come, and just 2 people a day just to come and cut up the meat for these animals is an enormously laborious job. We have drivers, we've got guards. So the cost of running the CCF Somaliland is massive. So so we need to raise more money to actually, you know, build up the reduction in demand side as well. So, but we are collaborating with the governments at the moment, and once that's in place and we've identified some influencers, then yes, we will be doing that, but not quite yet.
Thank you. Over to Bridget.
Yeah, we've got a question from Simon Goff. Does CCF have support from local governments in all areas? I would imagine this would be quite delicate.
Can I answer that again?
Yeah.
We were fortunate enough 2 years ago to win a DEFRA project under the Illegal Wildlife Trade Challenge Fund, and we're collaborating with I4 and Legal Atlas. And a lot of that work is around building capacity of law enforcement, but not just, but in the countries that that Brian showed on one of the maps, which was, so the main countries for this project are Somalia, Somaliland, Yemen, and Ethiopia. But we're also working on building networks within these countries. We've got some money from the CMS, which is the Convention of Migratory Species, to expand that work and look into what are called the IGAD countries, which include Sudan, Tanzania, South and North Sudan, and Kenya. So we're looking to actually increase law enforcement capacity in those countries as well. But within that, we are going to be looking at looking at, we are building networks within those countries, and we are working with local government, which I can't remember who it was, but of course that's incredibly important to be effective. We can't do it on our own. We are working with not just local government, but local NGOs, so hopefully those networks and collaborations and partnerships will support our work there.
Thank you very much, Jane. If we could get you guys just to keep on mute for now, we're nearly at the end. So we've had loads of questions. We won't have a chance to answer all of them, so we'll pick a couple more and then we'll answer the rest via email. So from Simon Taylor, on the social media front, the most popular viral videos I see involving cheetahs display people and cheetahs living in close proximity. Have there been any efforts to target and respond to such videos on social media to harness this publicity but correct the misconceptions that they can raise about cheetahs? Great question, thanks, Simon. Jane,
I think,
Brian?
yeah, and also Giles, I mean, you can kind of chip in there, but yeah, you do have to be sensitive on what's shown now. Times change, some of the I mean, I'm only 27, but it's you'll be surprised that I was alive 50 years ago as well. And I've got pictures of me with chimpanzees dressed up in fancy clothes on a Spanish beach, and that was kind of acceptable at the time. Things change, attitudes change, and education is key to everything, but sometimes a picture can say 1,000 words. So, it's, I mean, I know people that have been, that don't understand, things like Tiger Temple and stuff like that. We've had, kind of people that have been so supportive of conservation, and they've still got pictures at Tiger Temple. So, it's a very delicate area. And I get the point that if people are just going for clickbait, then, it's Giles. Did you want to jump in on that as well?
I've not really much more to add. I think you hit the nail on the head. Social media is so powerful, and beyond that, the way in which normal media have changed. If you look at what traditionally used to be print is now, I can think of a few newspapers that are much more active probably online than what they are in print. But social media has a role to play, and it's a fine, it's a very fine line. And there's it's impossible to get away. And I know it's stepping away from cheetahs, but I follow a chimpanzee rescue facility in Liberia, and by the sheer nature of them rescuing baby chimps that need, all the care of as much as a human baby, it would be impossible for them to be able to use any image effectively, because you're having to bottle feed it and take care of it. But they always caveat every single image with, a footnote saying these are not pets, under no circumstances would we want this. This is out of sheer necessity. They're still wild animals, and how bad the pet trade is effectively. And I think that's it, like you said, it just goes hand in hand with education. But if you've got pictures of a cheetah that was effectively born in the wild 18 months ago, and it's got a gold-studded collar and now sits on top of a, F1 Ferrari somewhere at the bottom of a very shiny skyscraper, then it probably has no benefit, right, to conservation or education or awareness. We know why it's being done. So yeah, I think it's a fine line. And I'm the same. I've people from a personal perspective, I've had slightly different career path, and I worked hands-on for a long time with species that traditionally you wouldn't necessarily say people worked with in a hands-on capacity, but I could justify that, and I still can, in terms of the benefit that we were gaining to support conservation, but at the same time, you know, the practices that we did it by and gave those individuals a quality of life. So it is a really difficult, delicate subject.
I seem to have spent the majority of my career being a buffer between idealism and realism. You know, and that buffer is an incredibly thin little line.
I think that's the perfect way to sum it up. You know, ideally, in an absolute ideal world, you know, we wouldn't want to have zoos or sanctuaries or have organizations, you know, like the ones that we work for, but it's not an ideal world, is it? And we need to try and find ways in which we can improve it. And like you said, it's that fine line, it's that buffer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you ever so much, Giles and Brian. Okay, we've come to the end. I'm so sorry we didn't have a chance to answer all of your questions, but we've taken a copy of the questions in the chat box, and we will respond to you guys directly via email. Just to say again, a final thank you. Thank you for staying on. It's lovely to see you're so keen to learn more about cheetahs. We really do hope you'll join us for our future events, and we'll be running another chit chat in the next few months. So we hope to see you there again. So thank you again to all of our speakers and presenters and to all of our amazing volunteers that helped to organise the event. And I hope you all have wonderful weekends. See you later, everyone.
Great. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was brilliant. Thanks. Bye-bye.